Now for our What in the World segment. Over the past 16 months of bloody conflict in Syria, observers have been waiting for one key development: top-level defections from within President Assad's inner circle. Suddenly, it seems a pressure valve has gone off. Pilots, ambassadors, and even one general have defected. What does it mean? The general is Manaf Talas, a childhood friend of Bashar al-Assad and an officer in the elite Republican Guard. Talas's father was chief of staff and then minister of defense for 30 years under Bashar's father, Hafez al-Assad. This is as close to the top of the Syrian regime as you might get. That's why Hillary Clinton took special note of Talas.
Because if people like him and like the generals and colonels and others who have recently defected to Turkey are any indication, regime insiders and the military establishment are starting to vote with their feet.
But there are some crucial caveats. Talas had not been a member of Assad's inner circle for a while. He had actually been under house arrest for more than a year. Also, he was high-ranking, but he was not an Alawite. While Alawites make up only 12% of Syria's population, they hold more than 80% of the positions in the powerful Republican Guard. They are the inner circle. According to some reports, when Sunnis are put on guard duty, there is always an Alawite soldier assigned to monitor the Sunni soldiers. But if the increasing number of top-level defections is a signal that the Sunni elite, which is comprised of generals, of businessmen, of bureaucrats, that have so far stuck with Assad, is now moving away from him, that's a huge shift, and one that will ultimately bring down the regime. There is mounting evidence that the Sunnis are weakening in their support for the Assad regime. We spoke with a former U.S. Marine, Austin Tice. He's now a law student and spending the summer reporting from Syria. On a recent embed with a rebel group, he found that the government's helicopters flew so high that they couldn't really aim their missiles. He saw firsthand that hostile fire from Assad's tanks and troops were poorly aimed and random. The suspicion among many rebels at the time, Tice says, was that the predominantly Sunni pilots and soldiers were deliberately missing their targets. Another telling indicator of dissent is the number of silent objectors in the army. According to the New York Times, a growing number of Syrian soldiers, many of whom lack the means to flee, are staying home. But to ensure their continued silence and neutrality, these officers continue to draw salaries and pensions. Money is the main reason to believe that Assad's regime cannot last. Inflation is said to be as high as 30%. According to some reports, Assad and his cronies are freely printing money. The Syrian pound has depreciated against the dollar by more than half on the black market. Meanwhile, the regime is running out of cash. 90% of Syria's oil used to go to the European Union, but sanctions have put a stop to that. Tourism and trade have, of course, plummeted, and monetary support from Iran cannot be counted on indefinitely. Tehran itself is buckling under unprecedented sanctions. And there was a report last week that Iran might be weakening in its support for Assad. An Iranian ambassador gave an interview in a Tehran paper criticizing his government's support for the Syrian regime and saying that Assad's days were obviously numbered. There's one more piece to the puzzle: the growing strength of Syria's opposition. The Free Syria Army is getting stronger. Saudi Arabia and Qatar are now openly arming the rebels, channeling them through routes from Turkey, Lebanon, and now even Iraq. Rebel attacks have become more focused, running deeper into two main cities, Damascus and Aleppo. The various opposition groups are coming together to plan for a post-Assad Syria. What would such a Syria look like? Up next, I'll speak with the man who is making the plans, the head of Syria's opposition.